Every generation of Pokémon had at least one monster that completely took over OU. Not just a strong Pokémon, but so centralizing that every team had to prepare for it. In this video, we are looking at each generation's most broken OU Pokémon, from Tauros tearing through Red and Blue all the way to Scarlet and Violet. Some of these Pokémon were unstoppable offensive threats, others were unbreakable walls, but all of them defined their metagame. So let's rewind to the very beginning, back when competitive Pokémon was at its jankiest, and let's meet the original king of OU, Tauros. Generation 1. Tauros might look like a pretty straightforward Pokémon, a fast normal type with decent stats. But in Gen 1 OU, RB-wise mechanics gave it some absurd advantages. First of all, critical hit rate was tied to speed, so Tauros' very high speed made it a crit machine. Body Slam could paralyze anything that wasn't a ghost, Blizzard gave it perfect coverage against Rhydon and Golem, the Pokémon that were supposed to counter it, and Hyper Beam did not even require a recharge if it scored a kill. Don't forget, in Generation 1, special defense and attack were a single stat, so Tauros was actually a pretty mighty special attacker as well. You combine all of that in a metagame where psychic types dominated and physical walls were, well, limited, and Tauros had no real answer. Because of all of this, of course, Tauros became the ultimate late game cleaner. Players built entire teams around setting up paralysis and chip damage just to let Tauros come in and sweep everything down at the end. Tauros wasn't just a really good sweeper, I wanna make that clear. It was mandatory. In RBY, every serious team had to run Tauros, and every player had to account for it. Now let's talk about Generation 2, and that of course is gonna be nothing else but Snorlax. Snorlax was already pretty good in Generation 1 of course, but in Gold and Silver it became the defining Pokémon in OU. With enormous bulk, great attack, Snorlax wasn't just another sweeper or another wall, it was the centerpiece of every single team, no exception. The biggest reason for Snorlax being so broken was leftovers. Generation 2 introduced held items and it was dominated by walls because leftovers had no counter. Knockoff didn't exist and Sandstorm wasn't viable because there wasn't any abilities yet, not to mention of course the rest and talk strategy, using rest to heal and sleep talk to keep attacking while asleep. Usually this would make a Pokémon more passive or more exploitable, but not Snorlax. Its huge bulk meant it could tank almost anything, and with Sleep Talk, it kept the pressure going even while resting. On top of that, Snorlax had incredible set variety. It had course sets that could snowball out of control, it had Body Slam of course to spread paralysis, and even normal stab self-destruct. With so many tools, no single Pokémon in the game could wall every single one of its options. In raw popularity, Snorlax is easily the #1 Pokémon in history, with most Gen 2 tournaments still clocking in at well over 99% usage. This is gonna be a fan favorite. We are gonna talk about Gen 3, and of course, in Gen 3, we have Tyranitar. Tyranitar wasn't new in Gen 3, but Advance is where it became the face of OU. With great stats across the board and a wide move pool, it could be a wall breaker, a sweeper, but what really pushed it over the edge of course, it was its new ability. Gen 3 introduced permanent weather, and Tyranitar with Sandstream instantly reshaped the entire metagame. Suddenly, chip damage from sand was inevitable, wearing down the walls that relied on leftovers. On top of that, Tyranitar's move pool was absurd. it could run Dragon Dance, it could run Pursuit, it could run hybrid sets, and there were even some bulky sets that could work. An already pretty good Pokémon all of a sudden was given the best ability in the game. ADB-OU revolved around Sand. You either built around Tyranitar or you built to survive it. Teams had to account for its endless set variety, and many entire archetypes existed just because of it. Players even have a shorthand for it, TSS. Your team needs Toxic, Spikes, and Sand. Tyranitar was the central force of Gen 3, and it is actually considered a force of balance, because it kept the meta from devolving into the wet noodle tank wars of Gen 2. Now, folks, this will be by far the most controversial Pokémon on this list, the spark of many arguments on the Smogon forums. As you are all aware, I am gonna talk about Generation 4 and the ever-present Jirachi. Jirachi might not look like the scariest Pokémon out there. It is a small, still psychic type with every stat at 100. That flexibility turned out to be its greatest weapon. Jirachi could be anything. The real secret to Jirachi's strength, of course, was its ability, Serene Grace. It doubles the chance for any secondary effect to happen. That means Iron Head, of course the most controversial, normally a 30% flinch move, can now flinch the opponent 60% of the time. That made Choice Scarf Jirachi infamous for stealing a game out of sheer luck. But that wasn't the only trick. Thunder Paralysis was also 60%, Fire Punch could burn twice as often, and Body Slam could paralyze even ground types. You combine all of this with its very good typing, of course, and Jirachi could fill almost any role. From Revenge Killer to Coal Mine Sweeper to bulky support, because Jirachi could do almost anything, it forced players to play a guessing game to scout its set and make a plan. You switch into the wrong move and you are dead. Entire games tilted on whether Jirachi flinched its way out of a counter or whether you guessed the Jirachi set right. Jirachi is considered uncompetitive and anti-fun in spirit, yet it is probably never getting banned. Since it can run almost anything and it fits every team, it just so happens that entire archetypes rely on Jirachi, and taking it away would cause a bunch of cascading effects into massive changes in the metagame that so far the Gen 4 community is not willing to see. Now we are gonna talk about the most annoying one in my opinion, and that's gonna be Generation 5, Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn is a spiky grass and steel wall introduced in Gen 5, and it quickly became the most defining defensive Pokémon in history. With amazing resistances, solid mixed bulk, and access to hazards, it was the perfect anchor for the bulky, weather-based metagame. Gen 5 made permanent rain and sun legal in OU with the introduction of Politoed and Ninetales new abilities, and Ferrothorn fit seamlessly into both rain and sand teams. Its only real weakness is fire, and in rain, fire is weakened, making it incredibly hard to break through. On sand, it paired beautifully with Tyranitar to wall a huge portion of the tier, and it also had everything you would want from a support Pokémon. Spikes, Stealth Rock, and Leech Seed on top of that. Its typing, it was its greatest strength, and it let it check massive threats like Latios, Rotom Wash, and Starmie, while still punishing physical attackers very hard with both Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. Ferrothorn didn't sweep a team, it choked a team. Because Ferrothorn was so effective, it was basically everywhere. especially in Rain, which is the most popular archetype in the game at the time. Every serious team had to pack specific, usually 2, Ferrothorn answers, whether it was Magnezone to trap it, or Hidden Power Fire for a cheese, or constant pressure from strong fighting types. The tools for breaking Ferrothorn were always very limited and they were always known. So much so that games often devolved into removing the few possible threats to Ferrothorn away. If you lost your Magnezone or your Hitran and Ferrothorn was still alive, it was essentially game over. You knew it was going to suffocate your entire team and there was nothing you could do about it. Gen 6. Landorus Tyrian. Landorus Tyrian debuted in Gen 5, but in Gen 6 it fully cemented itself as the face of OU, with an amazing ground and flying typing, strong stats across the board, and the ever-broken Intimidate ability. It could fill almost any role in the game, and it often did, ending up everywhere. Gen 6 introduced defog, making hazard control a lot more accessible, but Landorus Tyrian thrived regardless because of its sheer flexibility. It could run Stealth Rock as a bulky pivot, it could run Choice Scarf to revenge kill and keep momentum with U-turn, or even offensive sets with Swords Dance or Rock Polish. Its typing also let it check many threats like Excadrill, Mega Metagross and Mega Lopunny, while Intimidate gave it natural breathing room against physical attackers. No matter what role your team needed, it needed freaking Landorus. That's what it needed. Landorus could fit almost any role with not really any compromise at all. Because it could do so many things, Landorus became the single most common Pokemon in Gen 6 OU. And team building often started by taking a Landorus set by default, and opponents, of course, they always had to ask, is it gonna be Scarf Landorus? Is it gonna be Bulky Rock Landorus? Is it gonna be Double Dense Landorus? You could assume that it was gonna be in almost every single game. Toxapex. Gen 7. Toxapex is a bulky water and poison type introduced in Sun and Moon, and it quickly became the most polarizing Pokemon in Gen 7. It wasn't flashy, but it was power creep incarnate. Its ability, Regenerator, it lets it heal for a third of its health every time it switches out, which made chipping Toxapex down almost impossible. It also had Recover on top of that, Haze to shut down setup sweepers, and even Scald to shut down physical attackers and to spread burns. In a generation where offensive threats like Ash Greninja, Mega Metagross and Volcarona were everywhere, Toxapex acted as the universal wall, and unlike other walls, it couldn't just be ground down eventually, it came back over and over and over, outlasting almost anything. And that survivability came at no compromise because it offered a virtually infinite pool of utility. It had Toxic Spikes, Knockoff, Baneful Bunker, which is of course protect with damage on it, and of course Toxic on top of that. Toxapex became the cornerstone of balance and stall. Every serious team builder had to prepare and build around it, whether by packing a strong breaker like Kartana or Tapu Lele, or by specific cheeses like running Earthquake on a special attacker. Many players complained that it slowed games to a crawl, which of course it was the entire point. Just like Ferrothorn, if you didn't bring the right tools, Toxapex could easily just choke your entire game, take all your momentum and stall you out. It was so good that even teams that had no business in taking a wall did it anyway. Toxic made Toxapex a really good breaker as well, so even for offensive teams it could act as a bit of a complementary breaker, taking out the walls that your core couldn't. Personally, even if Toxapex isn't as popular as other Pokemon in this list, I do believe a Gen 7 team without Toxapex is trolling. If you wanna win, you find room for Toxapex. The reason you don't see it anymore is very simple actually. Toxapex's main strength was its exceptional move pool, and every generation after it kept losing vital moves that made it less and less useful, and that's because Game Freak recognized that Toxapex was a problem. Nobody in the right mind is making any illusion that Toxapex wasn't a huge problem in Gen 7. Dragapult. Gen 8 OU. Dragapult is a pseudo-legendary dragon and ghost type introduced in Sword and Shield, and from day one it became the face of Gen 8 OU. It has the 7th best speed in the game, strong offensive stats both physical and special, and tons and tons and tons of viable sets. It was the ultimate offensive Pokémon. Base 142 speed meant Dragapult could outspeed every unboosted Pokémon in the meta, making it the best revenge killer in the game. But it wasn't just the speed, it was a ghost type. It could block rapid spin to keep the hazards in the field, which is still to this day its main strength. On top of that, its move pool lets it take on countless roles. You could run Choice Specs Draco Meteor, which could one-shot so many Pokémon that had no business getting one-shot by a Draco Meteor. It had Dragon Dance, of course, so it could even run physical sets. There was even a Substitute and Hex set that abused status move from other teammates, and even utility sets with Will-O-Wisp or Thunderwave were common, and it also has access to U-Turn to work as a pivot. In a generation defined by boots, pivots and bolt turn spam, Dragapult could fit almost any one of those teams. Dragapult was so centralizing in Gen 8 OU that it even kept mediocre Pokémon relevant. You had dark types like Tyranitar and Mandiboss that stayed staples of OU just because they could check Dragapult easily. Dragapult's popularity wasn't because of a single mechanic or quirk, it was simply an exceptionally good offensive dragon, and whatever your team was, there is almost always a good use for an offensive dragon. Finally, we are gonna talk about the current generation, Generation 9, and this might shock you with my choice, but I am gonna talk about Goldengo. Goldengo is a Steel and Ghost Pokémon introduced in Scarlet and Violet, of course, and it instantly became the pillar of Gen 9 OU. Now, yes, the single most popular Pokémon in the game is actually Great Tusk because of its versatility as a spinner, a tank, a breaker, but while Tusk is everywhere, it is not really centralizing. Goldengo, on the other hand, is the most centralizing Pokémon in the tier. It almost single-handedly pushed the meta into Hazard Wars again after the introduction of boots, and just because it isn't in every team, it doesn't mean that every team isn't built around it. Because they are. Its ability, Good as Gold, blocks status moves, and that includes Defog. That single interaction reshaped the entire Gen 9 metagame, because for the first time in competitive history, hazards could be made permanent. In a generation where Spikes and Stealth Rock were already very powerful because of Terra and the offensive nature of the tier, Goldengo makes sure they are gonna stay up. And it isn't just a defensive utility Pokémon, Goldengo is actually really good. It can run Specs, it can run Scarf, which makes it a very strong sweeper. It can also run a bulkier set with things like Recover, which it also happens to have access to for some goddamn reason. And its typing is one of the best in the game, Steel and Ghost. It can stop almost everything, including, it just so happens, Mortal Spin from Glimora, so not even that is gonna be able to remove hazards. If you predict a rapid spin, you can switch into Goldengo, and usually, because Goldengo is an exceptionally good sweeper, you can get a free kill for that. Goldengo itself is not particularly hard to kill, but for its purposes it hardly matters, because in Gen 9 we do not have Pursuit anymore. That means Goldengo can switch into a rapid spinner and switch out without any real consequences. almost to the point that in some matchups, Goldengo is played more like a regenerator pivot than an actual sweeper. And because of that reason too, it also has great synergy with actual regenerator pivots like Glowking or Alomomola. And I know, it sounds silly, yes, but removing Pursuit single-handedly made Goldengo the most broken Pokemon in Gen 9. Because of Goldengo, Gen 9 OU devolved into a tier where hazards are the default state of the game. Heavy duty boots were used for Pokemon weak to rocks in Gen 8, but now we have entire teams designed to abuse them. Since removal is a lot harder, the strategy shifted from trying to win the hazard war into learning to live with hazards, and it also crippled a lot of archetypes. Since heavy duty boots are essentially life support for many Pokemon, knockoff is now pretty much mandatory on every team. Knockoff is one of the biggest winners from the Goldengo meta, because it takes away the only lifeline against hazards. Indirectly, Goldengo also ruined Stall. Stall teams rely on hazards for damage, yes, but they need to win the hazard war to turn that into a win condition. They cannot just sit there and take rocks all day, they need to switch in constantly. Stall was designed to win the hazard war for a win condition, but in Gen 9, the hazard metagame has no winner. It is mutually assured destruction. It is far more likely for hazards to just stay on both sides of the field, and that hurts Stall more than any other team. When you see Blissey or Quagsire sacrificing leftovers, their main staple, just to get boots, you are feeling the impact of Goldengo in the meta. I don't think I am exaggerating when I say that Goldengo is as meta-shaping as Tyranitar in Gen 3. Not because it is overpowered, not because it is unbeatable, because neither was Tyranitar for that matter, but because it changed the way everybody plays this generation. If Goldengo didn't exist, the meta would look drastically different in ways we cannot even foresee. And that, to me, is what makes a broken Pokemon. But what did you think was the most broken Pokemon ever? I had to pass up a lot of good candidates making this video, as you can imagine. I came back to Pokemon after 2 generations, and I am documenting everything I am learning into this very channel. I am live on Twitch almost every day farming the ladder as well. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.